But I think we would be remiss if we didn't start with where the genesis of you coming on the show today was. You sent me a link to something, and I was deep in calls today from like 9:30 until like 1 o'clock. It was just a nonstop parade of calls. And so I came up for air for a second, and you sent me this. I'm going to throw over to the people what Ant sent me over on Twitter, and then we're actually going to dive into the contents of this article. If you remember like a week or so ago, there was a rumor that there was a contentious argument in the Phillies clubhouse. And today, Jeff Passan put out, here's the tweet. Philadelphia Phillies star Bryce Harper stood nose to nose with MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred during a meeting last week and told him to, quote, get the fuck out of our clubhouse, end quote, if he wanted to talk about a salary cap, sources told ESPN. I want to dive into this story. I want to dive into how all this happened. But, Ant, since you were down around the team, covering the team, can you give people a little bit of an insight into your interactions with Bryce Harper? You hear about a guy who's like kind of stoic, can be kind of quiet, but a guy who clearly is very fiery on the field, can take that passion into the locker room as well. Give people a little bit more of a holistic view other than like what they see on TV in those scrums and on the field. Let's level set first. Your thoughts on Bryce Harper, covering Bryce Harper, what the guy's like.
Yeah, so the first thing I'll say to you, Russ, is that what you see on TV from Bryce Harper is pretty much what you get with Bryce Harper, even when the cameras aren't rolling, right? He's not, a guy who's always going to be out front on things that he's saying or things, the biggest issues of the day. He's going to just, give you his cliche answers. He's going to do his Philadelphia pandering, and then be done with it. And that's Bryce. He's kind of a more quieter guy. He's certainly not the clubhouse leader, right? Like I still say the clubhouse leader is Schwarber, is Real Muto. For the pitching staff, it's probably Nola. I know a lot of people don't believe that, but I say it because I see it. Like those are the guys that are kind of the leaders in the clubhouse. So when Bryce Harper speaks, no matter what he speaks about, it's always with some thought, right? He always knows that when he says something, it's going to be heard. And it's intentional. So, for example, in the last few weeks, multiple times, he's called himself one of the best players in the game. And I think that was kind of a reminder to everyone that no one's been talking about me for a while. Yeah, I've been hurt, and my numbers are a little below normal, but I'm healthy now. Pay attention. And I think that was the intention of that, right? And it had different meanings for different people, whether it was for the Phillies or for the fans or for Major League Baseball itself. He was sending different messages by saying those things. Now, he didn't actually come out and say anything publicly in this instance, but I'm pretty sure that the story getting out was done with his blessing, because it didn't get out last week. And we were all asking questions about it last week. Like, what the hell happened? And everybody was kind of like, I don't know, whatever. Castellanos talked about it a little bit on Substack. Our guy, Tim Kelly, asked Matt Strom up in New York about it. Matt Strom, he's another guy who's got no filter. He didn't say anything about it. So obviously nobody was saying anything until Bryce kind of gives it's okay to let it out. And then it gets out with Jeff Passan today.
It's pretty wild. I want to kind of go back to one of the first things you said, because we have to circle back around to this as well. You mentioned that Schwarber is a leader in the clubhouse. Interesting. He's still not signed. Seems like mismanagement, but we'll get there a little bit later on. The Harperness of it all, and what I thought was especially funny, and I want to actually go to this part of the story. We're going to throw over here to ESPN.com for this one. They talk about sources. Sources say, and then there's a direct quote or two from Nick Castellanos within the content itself, which is hilarious to me. So it's like, all right, was Castellanos the source for a lot of this? Were there three or four other guys? Probably three or four other guys. But so to set the context, I guess, Manfred meets with all the teams and is trying to better the relationship between the league and the players. This clearly didn't go the way that he expected it to. The thing that I guess is notable is that one of the things that Castellanos went on the record about was that he kind of diffused things by saying, I have more questions, and that eventually Harper and Manfred shook hands. But then apparently, this was another one of those like sources things, Harper chose not to take calls from Manfred the following day, which is kind of interesting. But that they were both passionate, you're both going back and forth. Is it a bad thing necessarily, Ant, in your mind for this story to get out the way that it did? Is it a black eye for Rob Manfred, who already isn't a very popular commissioner? Does it kind of go to show that, especially with the Castellanos quote, that Manfred was also giving it back to Harper, that maybe the two of them together, like it ends up showing that he's willing to kind of stand up to the players, that he's not a commissioner who gets bowled over by his players like Adam Silver's kind of viewed in the NBA? Like, where do you land there?
First of all, I want you to pull the thing back up again, Russ. I want to show you something else because you made reference to sources and then Castellanos is the one that's quoted, right?
Yeah.
But then there's another line. When reached by ESPN, Harper declined to comment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Through a league spokesperson, which was also interesting. Why? Oh, Manfred declined. Manfred declined. Yeah, Harper declined to comment.
So Harper declined to comment, but that means he declined to comment on the record. So Harper could well have talked to Jeff Passan.
So he could have been one of the unnamed sources.
Correct. Could well have been. I'm not saying he was. I'm not saying he was, but could well have been. Okay. So they just kind of put that out there. So my take on this is that, it's interesting because Bryce has never been a guy in the past who has been vocal about the salary stuff in Major League Baseball. He was always one of the haves, right? He was always one of the guys who had one of the biggest contracts, and he was never viewed as a guy who was going to speak for the little guy, right? Who was going to go in there and fight for the guys making less than $1 million a year or whatever the case might be. But now let's look at it this way, Russ. Bryce Harper 2 years ago, it's 2 years ago now, right? Started hinting that he wanted a new contract.
It was
It
was around this time last year when I lost my shit about it.
Well, but he did it and first mentioned it during spring training. So I think it was spring training of last year that it was first brought up, and then it came back up again around this time last year. So the fact is that Bryce now thinks that he's underpaid, and in a lot of ways he is, considering what he's done for the Phillies to this point. And when you look at how quickly salaries have escalated in Major League Baseball, his contract is a damn bargain, right? So in a lot of ways, Harper is underpaid, but he signed the contract. He put it in that he got in there with no opt-outs to get it renegotiated. That was all on him, right? So really he's got to own that. That being said, I think he maybe looks at this as an opportunity to say, hey, it's not all about me. I'm for everyone else. And he goes right at the commissioner. And I say good on Bryce. Good on Bryce for doing this because, first of all, I think Rob Manfred's a terrible commissioner. I really do. But beyond that, I think that the owners in baseball have been just the worst collection of sports figures in any sport that I've ever seen. And it's really bad when you have multiple, and there are multiple owners who don't really care to compete in the sport that they own a team in. Yeah. And so rather than sit there and say, oh, well, we need a salary cap. You know why they need a salary cap, Russ? They need a salary cap because salary caps create value for the franchise. That's the only reason they want it. Because when you can show that you are limiting your salaries, limiting your expenses, that means your revenues are going to go up every year. Therefore, your company, your entity is going to be worth more money so that when the time comes to sell it, you will be making 10 times, 15 times, 20 times what you paid for the team to begin with. That's the only reason owners want salary caps, no other reason. If you don't want to own a baseball team, I mean, if you don't want to be competitive, then don't own the
You shouldn't own a team.